Hello, gang. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Randall Carlisle, my co-host Rachel Santizo.
Good morning.
Our guest is Courtney. We will introduce him in a second. And I'm angry today.
What's going on, Randall?
Well, I came across a news story and it was like, what? What? It's from CNN, and the headline is an increasing number of states are moving to decriminalize fentanyl test strips. And I thought, what in the hell is going on? They've been legal in Utah for several years now.
Yeah.
And why in the world would you make it a crime to have a fentanyl test strip?
What is the purpose of it? I never even heard that there's charges
I can't
for
believe
them.
it. And the state distributes them. We do at our Martindale clinic.
Right.
And for those of you watching, a fentanyl test strip is part of harm reduction. It
Right.
sort of accepts the fact that there are people out there who are doing drugs and will continue to do drugs.
Yeah.
But more people are dying from fentanyl overdoses, from fentanyl being put into the drugs. So we hand out these test strips that have they don't have any drugs on them or anything. You can't get high, and you test a little batch of your heroin to see, or meth or whatever, and it shows whether there's a level of fentanyl in it, and then
Right.
you can use your own judgment about whether you want to shoot up a whole bunch and die, or maybe mitigate because you have
Or
fentanyl
use
in it.
less, right.
And so why would a state outlaw fentanyl test strips?
Right, and really, a lot of drugs are actually being laced with fentanyl.
Yeah, absolutely. Even marijuana. I've heard.
Not just heroin. So
Come
it's
on.
a lot of people are dying because of fentanyl. So why would you?
Wake up.
I know.
If you're watching this and you live in a state where fentanyl test strips are outlawed, call your legislators and tell them how stupid they are.
Right. What?
How do
why
I feel
are-
about this? I feel pretty strong. I
Good. I support you.
I never used IV drugs or anything. Mine was alcohol, but
Well,
maybe
so-
they'll start putting fentanyl in alcohol. I don't know.
Who's to say? And I think it's that whole discussion about harm reduction. You know, people being against harm
I
reduction.
know. So it's syringe exchanges, things like
Yeah.
that. People, we'd rather have. You got to accept the fact drugs have been around forever. Drug addicts have been around forever. But more and more people are dying because of fentanyl. So harm reduction simply says we're not advocating you doing drugs, but
Right.
we do want to keep you alive, and possibly someday you'll seek treatment. You know,
Right, right.
and want to recover. Speaking of recovery. You know,
I'm really proud of you. I like this
you and
side
I
of
are,
you.
That was a good transition.
I
wasn't
know,
it?
that was.
You and I have been in recovery for 10 years now, right?
Yep.
And there are people that I've seen at AA meetings and everything. And at AA meetings, we refer to it as dry drunks.
Yeah.
And it's people who just, for one reason or one way or another, stop doing whatever it is they were addicted to. And they're technically sober, but they're not happy. Right?
Like
And-
stagnant is what
Yeah,
I was
it's like every day is like, God, I want to drink, but I'm not going to have a drink.
Right.
Courtney Beckstead is one of the finest examples of somebody who is not a dry drunk, because I have never seen you looking unhappy. There must be times when you're down, but you seems like you're happy all the time.
Of course.
Why?
Just try to, as long as you stay happy, I mean, kind of makes your life go better. You know, I mean, it just, why pay attention to your problems? You know, why worry about that kind of stuff?
And so tell us your story about when you were fighting addiction, and then how you recovered and what you're doing now.
So, you want me to start from the start or what?
Well, how far back does it go? The
So
1800s?
No, close.
I was a drug addict in the 1800s.
No, so I started, because I didn't do drugs at a young age. I actually went on an LDS mission. And so when I was 19,
Okay.
and I served the whole 2 years. I wanted to come home about 3 months into it, but I served the whole 2 years, came home, and it was good for about a year, and then I was going out being like a designated driver with my brother, and so I decided to, they found out, or I was drinking like Cokes, they were drinking like alcoholic beverages, so for 50 cents more, I could have got a little Crown or Jack in my Coke. So
Okay.
I basically sold myself to the devil for 50 cents.
Yeah.
So you started drinking.
So I started
at,
drinking
what,
at about
20?
22.
Oh, okay.
And it was not shortly after that, like about 23 years old, I got into meth pretty bad. Started stealing cars. I mean, got into drug court in like 2003, and I had like 7 different felonies for stolen cars, forgeries. I mean, you name it.
Was it curiosity? I mean, that was just
I think it was.
Yeah, that's a hell of a transition from Mormon
Yeah.
missionary to stealing cars
for
and doing
50
meth.
cents.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy story, man. I mean, it's wild. It's been quite a ride. But yeah, it all started with that drink, and then
Yeah.
I knew what meth was, and I'd had the temptations to do it, and I turned it down a lot. And then I was like, what the hell? I have not seen this side of life.
Yeah.
I think it was curiosity. And so like I said, I had all these charges. I got into drug court. Should have learned then. Didn't learn my lesson. I mean, in drug court, they like to scare you with all the charges that you have. So I think with all my charges, I had like 67 max years in prison.
Whoa.
And so, needless to say, I completed drug court. I didn't mess around. I think I drank on it. Obviously, I can't think.
Yeah.
I think, but yeah, I didn't do drugs or anything. I didn't want to. The prison time didn't look appealing to me.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so after that, I kind of got into like I got into a toxic relationship, and it is my children's mother. But so after drug court, I got sober. I was so obviously sober during that time, and then I'd met her and got back into drugs.
How old were you?
This was about 26
Okay.
years old when I met her. And I got back in. She talked to me about pills, and so I started taking pills, and of course that's basically opened my mind. Oh, I remember. So I used to do meth. The pills opened it up, and so I started doing meth. Then we started doing heroin, and it just rolled out. I mean, we were just doing drugs daily. I mean, I had my grandma, my poor grandma. She didn't really have the healthiest doctor prescribing her pills, but he was prescribing her Soma, Xanax, I forget the other one, and it was oxycodone, Soma, and Xanax, and she had 90 pills each, and I would steal them from her or take them from her, and it was just, I mean, I think back now, it's just horrible, the things I've done to my little grandma, but
And she didn't know.
she knew, yeah. She went through it, or she's been through it with me because we lived with her at the time till we got our own place. But we went through all those pills in like a week's time,
Whoa.
whether it was taking them or selling them. And then my grandma, when I said she didn't have the healthiest doctor, she went back to her doctor and said they got stolen. And he gave her all new scripts.
Which was sort of true.
Which was sort of true, yeah. And I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, I remember times I was doing meth and my grandma wanted me to show her how I did it. Like how I smoked it on foil. And I'm like, what the heck? I mean, it was crazy going from a Mormon missionary to this.
In less than 10
In
years.
way less than 10 years, yeah. And so...
Did Grandma do meth with you?
No, she never did that.
Well,
Like, I would not. I'm like, no, this is weird. First of all, showing her, and I'm like, we're not doing this. No. So Grandma was very LDS. They still went, not very, but I mean, they went to church, tried to keep it in the life. My mom tried to keep it around. She sold her old house and got $10,000. And I remember I was taking money slowly out of her wallet, like $100 at a time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
it
were
was
a bad boy.
I was a bad kid,
Little
man.
grandma.
But then it kind of turned around a little. I got on methadone, so another harm reduction thing, or not harm reduction, but medical
Yeah, it is.
assisted
It is.
treatment.
Yeah.
And so I got on that. I was on it for 7 years. I just didn't do the detox of it. I did the maintenance,
Yeah.
and I mean, but it was working. And then eventually, it was the hangover cure. I could go out, I could drink I could do drugs, I could do anything, but then I got my dose in the morning and I wasn't sick. So, yeah, it was all just
That works for
nonsense.
a hangover?
Yeah, I mean, because I'd be hungover in the morning and then
I
you'd
was,
take-
You
I
wouldn't
wasn't
be-
drunk all
yeah.
those years. I
Hey,
didn't know I
should've
could have
took some
tried
Methadone,
methadone.
So you can't
Yeah, I
with
mean,
your
yeah,
own-
you feel like shitty in the morning, and
Yeah.
so I took my methadone every morning, and yeah, you'd feel fine. It's like your day's reset. But yeah, I went through that, and then I remember a guy telling me about methadone, and he was like, "It's not the real life. Like he's all you're living a life in like a clouded reality." He's like, "You need to get off that shit someday." I think it was a guy at the clinic or something like that. One of the doctor, or I think it was a guy I called on the phone or something, like for help one time, for treatment. And it is so true. It's well, for me at that time, it was. I mean, it does help a lot of people, but it was just becoming a crutch that I was just relying on to continue to get high and feel good about it.
And I heard methadone's harder to get off of than like heroin.
Yeah.
So
It's
so
horrible.
what'd you do?
So I went to jail a few times, and you don't get it in there unless you're on huge amounts, but I wasn't on that big of an amount. But I went into the Haven. I kind of got off the methadone. I kind of just, my mom was helping me. My parents helped me a lot. I was very enabled. Like, they would help me pay for my doses. I would kind of like cry and say, I don't have money to get high. And I'd get $60 from them here and there. They were just very enabling about things. So the methadone, when they stopped helping me pay for that, I couldn't dose. So that's when I got hard back into just doing meth, drinking, all that. But then I went to the Haven back in 2014. And that was kind of my first real thing of recovery. I'd never been into a treatment until then.
Wow.
And so I went there. And it worked. I mean, it made me realize a lot of my old things in my old, like growing up and stuff. Like, we had family dinner. We had all of us together in one house, you know. I mean, it was just like, it was bringing it back. And we'd go to meetings. You know, I love meetings. I haven't been to in a long time, but I'm so busy, but that's no excuse. But yeah, I mean, I just don't know if it was long enough. I think the real reason, I think the Haven works. It's just when I got into sober living, I was still not detached from the ex. She was out there doing her thing, and she needed a place to live. So I thought I needed to be captain of the day and leave my sober living where I'm doing great and save her. And yeah, needless to say that, I think it lasted.
And
I think I was drunk that night.
Where are your kids during this time?
So my kids, during this time, they lived with us when we were, of course, through the first part. I lost them probably halfway into it. My parents took them. There was a time when my dad and them had them, but none of my family could really, at that age, really take care of two kids.
Yeah.
The state was involved, and I remember when I was in the Haven, my ex was in Odyssey house.
Okay.
And she left, or she got kicked out, I'm not sure. But because of that, we actually, instead of going at it separately like we should have, the adoption, or not adoption, but the changing our lives, I said, no, we're a family, we're going to do this together. And because she messed up her program, I
You
lost.
messed up yours.
Yeah, I messed up mine too. Even though I was doing good, I was in the Odyssey. I mean, I was in the Haven. But that's lesson learned. I should have went at it as a single dad. And so the state came in, the state took them. They are now adopted out into a home. Family lives in Sandy. I don't get to see them just because, I don't know, it's not really a closed adoption. Like, I mean, the family said I'm still waiting, but I mean, they said if I was sober, I could be involved. But, you know, I know they're safe. I know they're happy. And so I really don't push things right now.
Yeah.
I have an older daughter that I had when I first started drugs. She lives out of state. I have a good relationship with her.
You're a good man.
Thank
Courtney.
you. Thank
You're
you
a good
so
dad.
much.
Yeah.
So how did you, so you get back with your wife, you relapse after the Haven,
Right.
then,
Got back with her, and then we basically just did drugs, and it got out of control. I couldn't take care of the place we were in, and I became homeless. And I'd been homeless before this. Obviously, that's when I went into the Haven. But over probably 4 years stint of homelessness. But so I was back on the streets, and I'm just using drugs downtown by the shelter.
So you were down on the block.
Yep, down on the
Yeah.
block.
Did you run into Rachel when she
I
was down on the
know.
block?
No, I think
I
you
was
were
under the
probably getting
cars.
sober then. I don't know. This was
Yeah.
about 2014.
Yeah, I went in 2012, so
Yeah.
we might have crossed paths.
But I believe I'd seen other people, like my peers, like Mike and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting.
It's a
huh?
small little
Yeah.
world down there, you know.
So you're homeless for 4 years.
Homeless for 4 different years. Yeah, just little stints. I mean, I'd go into the VOA a lot, try to sober up, but it was just became a place to stay. On the streets, using, and I was getting tired of this life. I realized nothing was coming of this. And so that's when I chose to go to Odyssey House. I didn't get picked up by the diversion, that thing that went on.
Right.
Yeah.
I was too paranoid and scared. I wanted to get in before they got me, and so I was in the VOA. I sat in the VOA for 21 days waiting for a bed.
Yeah.
And I remember I chose Odyssey House, and then I was like, well, maybe I want to do First Step. And they said, well, Odyssey's here to get you. This was the day I was supposed to be admitted, and I was like,
Okay.
shit. I was like, well, let's go, you know. And now that I think back, I'm grateful I didn't do First Step. I just knew I was trying to cut it short, like give myself the easy way out. And not saying, First Step's a great program, I'm sure, but I needed Odyssey. I needed the hard.
For those of you watching, Odyssey is considered probably one of the strictest and hardest, and therefore, if you stay, one of the most successful programs.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And so I went to Odyssey that day, and it was chaotic. I remember it was craziness. Like it was like 100 something people in one house. And I was just like, whoa, blown away by all. It was a lot different than the Haven. The Haven's small, like 18 people.
Yeah.
This is 100 different people, and everyone's doing different things. But I settled in, you know. I had warrants when I went there, and so my PO knew I was in. I called him, just was straight up with him when I was in the VOA, and I told him, look, I'm here at the VOA. I'm getting help. And so I went to Odyssey House, and then he actually came there and arrested me, took me to jail. It was a book and release. And he's like, so now what you choose to do after this is up to you. And like I said, I was tired. I was worn out. I was tired of the life. And so I chose to stay. And I knew my family wanted the same thing for me. But I finally wanted it for myself. I've always
Which is
been
the
doing
key,
it.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. You got to want it for yourself, or it's never going to work. And so I finally surrendered, basically, and I started doing the program as it was set up. You know, different levels. I moved up the levels pretty quickly because I just chose to mind my own business. I think there was a few borders that I got involved in smoking. Imagine that.
Right. Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, it really helped me. I mean, that program saved my life. And while I was in the program, I lost my mom. She would come. She was my number one supporter. She'd come every week, visit me. And then I got a call one morning from my brother, who is also in recovery. He went to get some jeans for me to bring him up to the house, and they'd found her dead. And so that was a hard thing to deal with.
And a lot of people would use that as an excuse
Yeah.
to relapse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I'd talked to my therapist. It was a hard time. I mean, I really didn't. I try to think back. I'm like, did I want to leave? And I didn't really want to leave because I was that defeated. But I did feel that screw it type attitude, you know. But I stayed, and I worked things out. And I mean, I just knew that my mom would be way happier the way I am now than I was then. I mean, she'd seen me through my worst. And so I stayed, worked it out. I was in the house for about 10 months, ended up voyaging. I was a voyager for 7 months, and then I graduated the program in April. It was like April of 2018. Yeah. And now,
he's one of the shining stars who works at Odyssey.
Right.
Tell us what you do.
So
and
now,
it's so important what you do.
Right. Now I'm the property manager for Odyssey House. I love what I do.
He manages. We have a large number of units available for sober living, transitional, like a sort of a step down kind of process when you get out of, say, residential treatment. Before you just go out into society, there's this middle ground, which, and you manage the whole thing. How many units? How many?
So right now we have 90 different people. So it's a lot. I mean, I remember, Michael, when I lived there, my boss, she told me, she said, I need you to be my eyes. Like, I need your accountability. This is when I was a client still. And I said, well, I know that property manager position's available. So that's kind of how that worked out. She said, okay, well, give me a chance. I'd never really did actual legit jobs. Like, I learned everything from my uncle and my grandparents growing up about like the skills, like plumbing, carpentry, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, because you can do anything.
So I do a lot of stuff, but I never really did physical jobs of that. And so that's where she was a little hesitant, like didn't know what to do. But I mean, I think we kill it as a team together now. And I'm very happy for the things we do. And that also includes, it's not just you give someone an apartment and say, okay, enjoy your apartment. There's supervision Absolutely.
that you do,
Yeah.
right?
Explain. Oh, yeah. So I'm with these clients day in, day out. I mean, I do a lot of the maintenance issues during the day, but I mean, there's times at night I've had to evict people. There's times I have to go talk to them to, calm them down. I've had numerous drugs turned into me, drugs, needles, anything.
Well, there's a support factor too, like because that step down, it's like that step down into the real world, which is one of the most important pieces after treatment is addressing like, this is the next part, and this is when your recovery really begins, and so you bridge that gap with them as like that peer support piece.
That's what I've
for these individuals.
Basically, I feel I am good with them too, like Michael says, but I try to like be there for them, like realizing that I was that person, and that I can kind of understand where they're coming from. I mean, I've had a guy that when I had to go over and get with him about going to detox, he's like, he's told me later now, but he's like, I really want to thank you for the way you handled me. He goes, you came in my room, even though I was getting high, you pulled up a chair and sat down and talked to me. He goes, I'm used to people just yelling at me and screaming at me. And he goes, and I said, well, I'm just like, I like to meet people where they're at. And like I said, I've been there, done that, and so I like to
describe why, everybody thinks, I think people who don't understand the world of addiction, they think of treatment and things like that. Right. Why is it so important to have transitional sober living?
So I think transitional sober living is important because you're not thrown right back out into the real world right away, where your neighbor could be using or drinking, or dealing, something. I mean, you're just in a safer environment. It's there's more rules than than you would in your own place, but it's definitely that transition that's needed. I know because I've done it a couple different times to get back into the real world. I mean, I always tell people when they're searching to try to get their own place or rush out of sober living, I'm like, pump the brakes, slow down. It's just an important key to, before you get back out into the real world, to get some sober time behind your belt, work on yourself more before you go out there.
Yeah, and there's also
Rachel,
help.
Do you love Courtney?
Oh my gosh, I'm in love with Courtney. He's fantastic. And I've also been able to work with Courtney. So there's been individuals that have unfortunately gone out, and I don't even know if it's unfortunately, everybody's journey is different, right? That have gone back out, and then we've stayed in contact and got them back into treatment. So instead of going back out and not having that loving support, they've actually like contacted us and got
Right.
back into treatment, you know, and I think there's also funding help and accountability and taking UAs and stuff, because we still need somewhat of that structure, because then our life comes into play, right? Like, and our like bills and like adulting and all these other things, and it hits you like
Right.
once it hits you and you're back in it, you know. And so I think it's super important. And I want to know, what does it do for you?
What does it what do?
Like being in this role, like what does it do for you coming from the other side of it, you know, because you're doing
Yeah.
this monumental role and you're playing a very important role for all these people.
It
What
really
does it do for you as one person?
it strengthens me. I mean, it makes me feel really good that I'm part of something bigger. You know, I've always wanted to be in something like handyman type things, but
You're a
at the same time, work in recovery and work with addicts so closely that I can be on their level and like help them out. Like, I mean, we're almost at the front of the lines, you know. I mean, other than where we are, I mean, VOA would be the front lines,
Real
right?
front
The
of
real
the
front
line.
lines.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, it makes me feel real happy. It makes me feel grateful that I could be part of something like this. I've always, when I went through the program, I wanted to work for Odyssey. And it was just, like the stars were lining up. I mean, everything just happened at the appropriate time. The job became available. I got the job, and I love everything I do.
Well, Odyssey loves having you. The reason I ask you if you
Yeah.
love him is Courtney's a big guy, and he can be pretty imposing. And I suppose if I was out down on the block with you, and I wouldn't want to fight you over some heroin or something, but you are. I can tell you universally, because I know people in all aspects of Odyssey, that you
Right.
are a beloved person,
Yeah.
and you're
Thanks.
a gentle giant.
Thank you.
You know.
I was a lot smaller back then, by the way, on the streets.
Were you?
It was like, I think I was down to like 167 pounds, yeah.
Wow.
I was
What- I couldn't
really skinny,
imagine.
man.
He loves to eat. I see
food's
I see
definitely-
posts on Facebook where he'll show the meal that he's going to eat that night, and I'm sitting at home looking at that, and I go, wow. So, well, he's a big guy. What can I say? How do you? I mean, is what we see is what we get? That you are a gentle, loving person.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a totally different person sober than I was. Obviously, we all are. But I mean, that's just how I am. I mean, I just want to be this guy that can help people. Yeah, that's just, I am the gentle giant.
What do
like a
you-
little teddy bear.
What do you do for your own sobriety? So you're embedded, right? Like around with Odyssey
Right.
and stuff. Well, what do you do to keep your own smile and for your own recovery?
So I do like to make time for self-care.
Yeah.
I'm highly involved in softball. Like I said, I play on the first softball team that we had going. We have 2 teams now. I get involved in the bowling during the off season of softball. I should hit more meetings than I do, but
Same
I'm
here.
tired a lot, man.
Well,
I'm worn out.
I maintain that working in the environment that we do,
Yeah.
To me, that's part
It's
of my
like a meeting.
recovery.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're really dealing with it every day,
Right.
You know? And you're
Right.
thinking about other people
Right.
and helping them get recovery. So in a way, you're helping yourself, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I have like a lot of supports around me. Like a lot of my brothers are in recovery, real brothers. So they're there. I mean, I've actually pulled my other brother out to come play softball. My other brother does his own thing, like into meditation and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just find time for myself. You know, I mean, you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself to keep yourself happy. That's the main thing I think about it.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time. Before we leave, Adam Cohen, our CEO, wanted me to get you to sign a 10-year commitment to stay at Odyssey House. So we'll do that. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Courtney Beckstead is a really beloved member of the Odyssey treatment team and performs such an important function. And
Yeah.
thank you for being here and sharing.
Thanks for having me. I
sharing
appreciate
your life. And the goal of this is not to say, oh my God, what a horrible life he had, and now he's sober, but hopefully inspire
Yes,
other people.
Right. That's what I'd like to do. I should share my story more.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I get so tied up. I remember Matt hit me up a long time ago, and I was like, oh, I'm busy right now. It just never came to. And no, but I'm more than happy to. So thank you.
Good.
Thank
and he
you.
gives really good hugs. If you ever need a hug, go to
Of course,
Courtney.
Rachel's small and he's big, and so
I
he can
just-
wrap his
He's
arms
engulfing
around
I just
her.
melt in there.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks, Rachel. And thank you
Thank
for
you.
watching another edition of Odyssey House Journals.